Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special Thursday edition of Front Porch Talk. I'm your host, Veteran Mountain Man, and apparently my guest just fell out, which is really sad. Give me a second here.
Sorry
Okay,
about
here
that.
she is. She's
Technical
back.
difficulties.
Not a
I
problem.
apologize.
I was like, I went live and you were gone. So I'm like, give me a second here. Let's make sure we can get her back.
I went to go click on another tab and the Google, I wasn't even like, I was nowhere near the Hangouts tab, and the Hangouts tab closed when I clicked on another tab entirely. Like I didn't click an X or anything. It just closed. It was bizarre.
I understand. It's okay. So today I'm going to be discussing the Listen and Believe movement with Atima the Hun here. And we might have a couple other guests pop in, hopefully soon. I see Goatman is in the chat already.
Oh, hey, Goatman.
So let's talk about what exactly this stuff is and why it is so dangerous for us here in this country. For everybody who isn't completely familiar with what the Listen and Believe movement is it's a push that all accusations, particularly of sexual assault or sexual abuse, have to be believed strictly on accusation with no cross-examination or questioning at all to find out what happened. Now, many of you will understand immediately why this is dangerous. Some people won't. So I want us to go ahead and discuss it in detail. Now, Atima here is actually, she wants to explain from her perspective why it's so dangerous. I know why I feel it is, but let's go ahead and let you have the floor here, Atima.
Well, it's kind of a multifaceted reason, isn't it? I mean, it's not just because I personally, as a rape survivor, don't like seeing people falsely accused. And I had to provide tissue from inside my body. And this was in the 90s. I had to provide tissue from inside of my body where I had already been violated as evidence for being raped. I had to deal with 6 that I can remember off the top of my head, different interviews and depositions when I went forward for my rape. I understand how difficult this process is, and there was no conviction. Okay? It's very common there's no conviction. There was no false rape accusation placed against me because there was tissue that showed that I had been physically raped. But it was before we had like real genetic testing or anything like that. So there was no real way to prove that these people had been the ones that raped me. All there was proof that I had been raped. And I had to provide evidence. I had to state my position. I had to do a lot of work to prove my position in that. And I think that's right. Even at the time that it felt hard and it was scary, at 18 years old, I knew it was right to provide information. I knew I had to prove my case because I was making an accusation, and it didn't feel like I was being victimized all over again because I couldn't provide tissue samples that they wanted to make a conviction with. That's not my problem. That was never my problem. My problem was that I didn't get a conviction, not because people didn't believe me. I provided evidence. And if I wasn't able to get a conviction, what makes this fucking broad who says, oh yeah, sometime in the 80s, like this guy at this house, this like one time, he like pulled on my shirt. And we were like drinking and I had a beer. And like he pulled on my shirt and he felt my swimsuit. And I know he was gonna rape me. And I know it. Okay, that doesn't do anything for anybody. All that does is devalue every other woman who has to come forth, provide information, testimony, and evidence to prove that they have been sexually assaulted. Because all she's done is make women that actually have valid, real accusations against other men, all she's done is make it harder for them to come forward now because of her little story. All these like 6 million women that are coming, oh, you like totally rape gangs and da 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 da. Like this isn't 50 Shades of Grey, retards. But that's where I come in. The problem is that this completely destroys the idea of actual justice, so that a girl could get ass pats because she thinks she doesn't even have proof. She doesn't have scars. She doesn't have, bruises or anything else from this incident. There's no physical evidence that anything happened. Supposedly she ran out of the house, but nobody remembers the party, and nobody, apparently nobody saw her run out of the house, because I don't know about you, but when my friends run out of a house, I'd go after them.
Yeah, I would
So
too, especially
why
if I
are
was
you
at a party.
right? My teenage friend ran out of a house crying. I think I would chase them down. That sounds like something bad fucking happened. Most people I know would be there. It's not like I'm that much younger than these people. The culture hasn't changed that much between our times. The entire thing destroys the ability for women to come out and say something and be taken seriously, because people like this that are like, oh, you just need to listen to me. I don't have to prove anything I'm saying. My fifis are enough. You need to understand how bad I feel right now. And that makes me so valid. Okay, that kind of shit is destroying the relationship that all women have with all men in Western society. You can't be perpetually the victim and act like everybody's going to attack you, and then be upset when everybody's afraid to talk to you because you're saying they're going to attack you. That's my biggest problem with the Me Too movement. It's destroying the ability for our society to interact with each other
I, I
fundamentally.
I hear you on that. I have actually a huge problem with it in that, well, to be perfectly fair, if you create an accusation against someone and you don't bring forward evidence and we just believe and convict, what's to stop an endless chain of false allegations just because somebody disagrees with you, doesn't like you, is upset with you? I mean, it really comes down to the fact that if you could just, let's say, for example, Atima, if you just went down the street from where you're at to the police department and reported that I tried to grope you, and there's no evidence, but they come and arrest me over it and throw me in jail, how was any justice done? What has happened? All that's happened is you've promoted fascism. You've promoted authoritarian jackbootery. I mean, you can't live in a free and open society if just the mere statement that somebody did something wrong with no tangible proof can throw them in prison, can take away their rights. I mean, that's the exact opposite of a free society.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely the opposite of a free society. All of this stuff, everything we're dealing with and talking about right now, is the polar opposite of freedom.
It
This
really
is
is.
the tyranny of
The tyranny of the mob.
it's the tyranny of public opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the tyranny of the mob. It was the very thing that the senators in ancient Rome tried to wield against the emperor when Rome went from a republic to an empire. And what the emperor wielded against the senators, they were constantly manipulating the mass of people against each other, trying to force what they wanted due to public opinion. And that's not how you live in a free society. I mean, that's literally being somebody else's pawn.
Yeah.
I mean, so I have never been able to understand how these people who back this movement, and this movement's older than just recently, hun. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s when there were a lot of people pushing a listen and believe mentality. And if you go back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s, in the South, amongst the very small town communities where the Ku Klux Klan, which was a chapter of the Democrat Party, used to reign heavily, there was a lot of listen and believe rape allegations from female Democrat women against prominent black men.
Oh, absolutely. This has been something that it's the Salem witch trials. Rome.
Yeah, yes.
This is a concept humans have been trying to try on because of our emotions for probably millennia now. And it never works. Never. It's not going to work. It's a flawed idea, personally, I think.
Yeah, Well, and I mean, it's bad enough that already our colleges are going to a preponderance of evidence concept, where if they can get if a girl can get two or three people to say she said to them that this person assaulted her, that they can convict that individual and kick them out of school, and all of this kind of stuff. It's bad enough that our schools are already going to that kind of a standard, because preponderance of evidence is very, very, very mid-level kind of judicial system. Well, I have this, this, and this that says you did it. All you have is this one person who says you couldn't have done it. Well, I have more evidence, so I win.
Yeah.
That's preponderance of evidence for people who don't know what it is. The guilty beyond a reasonable doubt standard that the United States put into place is because the original founders understood that it's very easy in some cases to create a preponderance of evidence. And so, like the third accuser in the Kavanaugh case, she says, well, I saw him standing near the punch bowl and it was spiked. Well, did you see him spike it? Well, no, but he was standing next to it. That starts drifting back towards that preponderance of evidence. In a preponderance of evidence standard, that would be enough. But in a guilty beyond reasonable doubt, you actually have to see them doing it. And I know some people will try to push back on that. Well, there are certain circumstances where you can create enough reasonable, tangible evidence where you don't have to physically see them do it. But you need to have really compelling evidence, stuff that can't just be dismissed. And it seems that we're drifting away from that.
Oh, absolutely. We're leaving common sense behind, and we're moving to the entirely reactionary, not like the political reactionary. The right people, the people on the right doing the reactionary thing. No, people that they react without any kind of thought or anything going to it. Amoebic response. I don't know how else to describe it, but reactionary. They have this weird, bizarre, emotional reactionary movement going on in most of Western culture right now, where the only thing that matters is emotions. That's literally all they're going to talk about, is how they feel about things now.
Yeah, and truth be told, feelings aren't what we should be doing.
No, most assuredly not. Most assuredly not. I can't figure out why anybody is going this route, honestly. I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I know that a lot of the people who are pushing for a more emotion-driven response are the progressives, especially like the leftist progressives.
Yeah.
And their push has always been to fundamentally create a whole new society that has nothing to do with the standards of the old society. I mean, even Marx back in the 1700s was talking about doing this. Now, what he was talking about was the end vestiges of monarchy that we needed to do away with. But they're implementing that now in our open and free and equal societies. And what they're doing is they're destroying the very freedoms that they've been given through the use of those freedoms.
Yeah. Yeah, they have. They have. Most certainly, we have a system where freedom is no longer valued. It's more about emotions. It's ugly.
And it really is, because the more we value emotions over actual freedoms and evidence and logic, the more we become enslaved.
Yes.
Because emotions are just that. They're responses. But a response isn't necessarily what's right or wrong. A response is just a response. If somebody pisses me off, I might flip them the bird. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to them afterwards, ever again. And if I did, I would be acting like a child. Why? Because that initial reaction was just, it was a response of frustration or anger. and it's not something that I have to be enslaved by.
Yeah. Well, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so I hate this. Like, I should be able to think. The kids aren't screaming at me. There's another side to the Me Too movement that people aren't really talking about, but the press is they're mocking most parents complaining about this right now. It's not just the Trumps coming out and saying, "Oh, I fear for my sons." This is something that a lot of parents, especially parents of male children, have been saying that they are afraid for their sons for about a decade now. I have my own son that I worry about. You know, my gods, are we going to have to go protect him and fight for him because some girl he dated, and he's a good guy. He doesn't hurt people. He's like a genuinely good person. And he would never assault a woman or anything like that. But I worry that some girl is going to get mad at him, and we're going to have to help him fight a battle where he's been accused of something like this, because it's so common for women to do this, especially to men that are willing to help them.
Agreed. And speaking of that, I did want to go ahead and plug a charity that I've given to real quick, if you don't mind, Atima.
Go for it.
It is a charity called the Lighthouse Foundation. It is run by Diana Davison and several other women who help men deal with false rape allegations and sexual assault allegations. They are currently primarily operating in Canada, but they do also operate in the United States. I do truly believe in this resource and this organization. They have done a lot of great work, and they are definitely somebody that you should consider helping support at some point in time when you can. Because I don't disagree with Atima here. I mean, right now we are developing a culture in this country where anything a woman says has to be true. And I'm not saying that women are all liars either. I will never say that. Men are not all liars. Women are not all liars. Those kinds of absolutes are fallacious from the start. But the idea that women are always truthful is also just as fallacious. People can lie, no matter who they are. So you have to go based off what actually happened. And the idea that you can just listen and believe, and then you should ruin a person's life and their livelihood. I mean, for crying out loud, these same people pushing this listen and believe movement are also pushing to ban the box for felons, because they say that they don't believe a felon should have to mark that they're a felon, but yet they want to accuse and imprison all men on rape simply on an allegation with no evidence.
Well, that's what they've been demanding since the 70s, though, isn't it? I mean, we've been hearing the same rhetoric since I was little, and I'm over 40.
I know, and you're not wrong. It's a toxic, destructive rhetoric. And
it's absolutely. It's like hyphenating American. I'm Swedish American, I'm Irish American, I'm Puerto Rican American. No, you're a fucking American. Shut the hell up.
Well, and I will be the first to admit I'm proud of my Irish, Scotch, and Welsh heritage, but I'm an American first, and I will always be an American first.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to reject something just because you don't believe everything somebody is telling you. It just means that you are willing to take it one step slower at a time. And I mean, I've even, in several instances, I've been taken advantage of, where women have told me, you know, this person attacked me, and the first thing I did is I tried to help them get away from that person. And then I come to find out that the attack never happened. And, you know, the whole concept is that even though if anybody ever comes to me and tells me that they've been attacked, the first thing I'm going to do is separate them from their attacker and try to get them help. It also doesn't mean that I believe wholesale that the person is truthful.
No.
And I have to act that way because if I don't accept that there is a possibility that they are telling the truth, then I'm a bad person. And if I just accept that everything they're telling me is true, then they can obviously manipulate me in such a way that they can cause me to do things that shouldn't be done.
Well, that's the whole premise of the listen and believe thing, isn't it? It's to make men malleable to women's whims. I mean, it's not like a there's not, we don't have, oh, goyim in the background. We's going to take all the men's, whoa, no, no. No, we don't have any of that, give me your shekels. No, we don't have any of that weird shit. But there's this weird subconscious expectation from the listen and believe movement that men are merely tools for women to get at each other. Really, that's what I'm seeing. This whole Me Too movement, the listen and believe, all that stuff, it's weaponizing men's want to have sex with women. It is completely weaponizing our biology. And that terrifies men and common sense women, and it's destroying the fundamentals of our society.
It really is, and it's insanely dangerous in that it could literally cause, fights in the streets. I mean, our biological imperative, the male biological imperative to protect, which is also part of our combatistic nature, is something that's very strong. It's one of the reasons I served. And it's something that men in a lot of ways express very healthily. But when you try to weaponize that against other people, it's what causes bloody wars, and bloody wars that were fought for no good reason.
Well, show me a war that has truly been fought for a good reason that couldn't have been resolved in another way.
Well, World War II, I don't think could have been resolved in another way.
That's about the only war I can think of, too.
Well, I would also consider the First World War probably about the same. They were basically extensions of each other.
Well, if we could have handled World War I intelligently instead of just Axis and Allies kind of bullshit, where we're just going to separate everybody and say, fuck you guys, if there had been an actual paying attention to what everybody was fighting about, it could have been resolved in a far less bloody fashion, and it wouldn't have resulted in 2 world wars. But, hindsight and all that shit, it doesn't matter now. My point is that most war is senseless, though. I mean, it's usually based off of some human impulsive thing that we're experiencing in that moment.
I don't disagree with you that most war is impulsive, but there have been some. I would also consider the American Revolution to have been a justified war.
Oh, justified, absolutely. It doesn't mean that there, I'm sure we could have found another way. We could have starved out just started sending all the British ships back to port. I mean, there were all kinds of other things we could have done, but I think the American Revolution, the way it was fought, was actually the least bloody way to do it.
Oh, I don't disagree with you on that. I think that the American Revolution was very well fought and was intelligently managed. But that's what I'm getting at, is there are wars in history that are justified. To be fair,
very few.
It's far fewer than we've actually fought worldwide. Another one that I consider to be justified were the 13 Crusades, which were in response to the 254 jihads that came out of the Middle East during the same time. Most of those were trying to stop the push of the Muslim invasion in order to protect the people that were already living there.
I thought they were just driving them out because they'd already come in.
Well, they did do some driving out, but like the 12th Crusade in Malta, the Muslims came in and launched severed heads into the city that were diseased.
Yeah.
And then took the city that way. And so the Knights of St. John came back in and took the island. And so, I mean, that crusade, the Knights of St. John doing that, I felt was very justified after having really read a lot more of the history about it and not just been told, well, the Crusades were evil.
Yeah.
But you aren't wrong. A lot of war is senseless. A lot of the war going on currently in Africa is senseless.
Middle East.
The continuation of the Korean War has been senseless. The Middle East, a lot of the warfare there has been It's all over on an interpretation as to who was correct after Muhammad died, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because Muhammad probably had syphilis and bipolar disorder. He was out of his goddamn mind.
But regardless of that, the fact that they're warring over who has the correct interpretation of this one sentence is rather senseless. And I don't disagree that most of that warfare should realistically stop, but at this point it's intergenerational. It's been 5-6 generations. It's very hard to stop something that has that momentum.
Yeah, it is.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted us to speak out today about this, because this whole lowering the standard of evidence and trying to create a society where one side is always truthful and the other side can't in any way, shape, form, or fashion defend themselves, it's leading to something like that. And once it gets established, it's going to be extremely difficult to stop.
Oh, it's going to be very difficult to stop. We already have an entire generation of young people. I mean, I don't know. Did you see that the Crowders changed my mind on rape culture as a myth? It just posted yesterday.
Yes, I did. And it was amazingly saddening to watch those people try to argue that 1 in 4 girls on campus had been raped.
Well, did you see okay, so there was a girl crying in the corner because, he said rape culture is a myth, and that makes her cry because apparently we let 14-year-olds into fucking college now, because I swear to God, she didn't look like she was even old enough to drive, let alone be at a college campus and learn something. And if you have a super genius, you don't let them hang out with feminists. You don't, because you're just going to ruin their brain and they'll no longer be a super genius. They'll be a lobotomized monkey.
Agreed.
So you see,
you don't let them hang with MGTOWs either.
No, it sucks the intelligence right. It sucks IQ points off of them quickly. You don't let little girls that are that emotionally fragile wander around a college campus. You don't. If you're that emotionally fragile, you need to go to therapy, an institution, something, because you aren't going to be able to function around other people. That kind of fragility is going to kill you. You are going to commit suicide at some point if you keep this up. Even if it's an act, you're going to get yourself worked up. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy thing. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay. You keep telling, I can't handle this. I can't handle this. I can't handle this. And eventually you're going to end up doing something completely destructive that costs you everything with that kind of mentality.
Oh, yes, you will. And not only will it cost you everything, but you're likely to take several other people into a downward spiral with you. And it's insanely group destructive because it infects others around you as well.
But did you see? But there was the girl crying, which brought in the actor boy. He was acting. Okay, great. So we have a retarded actor coming in here with a sign he grabbed from somebody else's sign, because his friend was crying, so he has to come chastise Steven Crowder and basically tell him, you just aren't using the right words. You need to shut up. You just need to shut up now. You aren't doing this in the way that I've determined is proper, so shut up. And then you had the screaming girl. He's using stats and statistics are, stats are bullshit. Empirical evidence is bullshit. Are you serious?
Yeah.
The only thing we can measure in the situation, and you're saying because it's measured, it's bullshit. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Who lets these people, how did they get into college in the first place? And you see this, and I'm like, wow, this is where Listen and Believe is going, to people that literally cannot figure out that you have to be able to look at a list of stuff to figure out if it's a list of stuff.
Yeah, that's really where it's going. In fact, the critical theory model states that the narrative must be functional no matter what the empirical statistics are, just because you believe it and you can find something.
Am I dying? No, I'm not dying. I feel like it, but I'm not dying, Sharati. I'm just allergies. Sleep
is important.
No, it's for when you're dead. Quit telling me it's important. Everybody who has kids knows that sleep is for when you die.
Well, a lot of soldiers say the same thing.
I'm sure. It's about the same level of work, if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
My son says his sisters are far more emotionally traumatic than listening to stories of going downrange.
Well, of course, because, hearing the stories of going downrange are really great. Living them are a completely different story.
He applied like almost 20 times to go downrange. I mean, like every time there was an mission open that he could have gone, he he applied. But because he was so far up the intelligence list, they said, "No, son, you have to stay stateside. Stateside. You don't get to go anywhere. Even if we sent you downrange, you wouldn't be allowed to leave certain sections of any base you attended." So
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
he was so it was like, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter if you go downrange. You're not going to be able to be in a firefight anyway because you tested so high. Sorry, you're an actual asset, son. Get over it."
You should have told him if he really wanted to see combat, he should have tested colorblind, then gone and been a chaplain's assistant.
Yeah, well, he scored a 97 on the ASVAB, so
I feel for him. I didn't score quite that high, but I scored quite high, and it caused me to have a lot of issues trying to figure out a job for me because I tested colorblind. And so they were like, well, we can make you a chaplain's assistant or this kind of computer tech guy. And I took the computer tech, and then I ended up in a bunch of combat zones.
oh, oh. Boy.
Because, see, I was actually going for forward operations. I wanted to be, 11 Hotel, 11 Bravo, something of that nature, maybe EOD. But that colorblind testing screwed me over.
Sorry, I'm putting a comment in here.
Not a problem.
Parenthood has taught me to never sleep.
Yeah, Alfred says that the Army taught me to sleep anywhere. Yes, Alfred, you learn to sleep anywhere, including on rocks that you shouldn't sleep on. But they also teach you not to sleep because when you're doing a 16-hour convoy, you can't sleep.
Well, figure if I've done 9 days awake without any drugs, I'll be fine on 16 hours a shift. I couldn't sleep. I was like 16 and I didn't sleep for 9 days straight. Like they were ready to they gave me sedatives and all kinds of stuff, and they were ready to institutionalize me until I fell asleep. And I said, "You guys put me in an institution and I will never speak to anybody in my family again."
Well, the thing is 16 hours on a convoy is not like any kind of day you've ever had at all.
No.
Because you are geared up, you're in combat position, you're in combat stance, and you're driving.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah, it is one of those kind of scenarios that it just sucks all the way around.
I've been loaded down in a car moving across the country. I can't imagine being loaded down in a truck with a bunch of ammunition and weapons going across the country that isn't your own, waiting to fight with people. I know how hard it is to have a convoy of people in a civilian setting. I can't imagine a convoy of people in a militaristic setting. It would, no, that would be way too many people to manage. I couldn't do it.
I actually had a very easy time moving cross country, managing the convoy I did, but I think that's
you can have toddlers and cats.
No,
Every time I move, I have small children and elderly pets. Why?
I did have an elderly pet. I just didn't have any toddlers.
No. Okay, so the first cross-country move I was by myself in the car with my middle child, and she was what, almost 3, 2.5, something like that. So I had a tiny in diapers, and I had my 2 cats, and we moved across the country. I was driving the car by myself because my husband had to drive the other vehicle with the rest of our stuff. Okay. And my son was already across the country. He was living in another state already. So it was just my husband and I and our middle child because my oldest was with her father for the summer. We took the 2 cats. He drove ahead of me. So it was literally me by myself with my 2 cats and my toddler.
Oh, man. Alfred just said stress, pothole stress. Yeah, that's exactly what a combat convoy is like, Alfred. It really is.
So it's like driving on the West Coast.
Yeah, but with guns.
But with more guns.
With more guns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fully automatic machine gun attached to the top of the vehicle,
Which
with
would be
somebody in
awesome.
it.
What a great place to sit. I would want to be there.
Oh no, you
Oh
don't.
God. Oh, you
Because
have no idea.
you're standing the entire time, hon. When you man the 50, you're standing.
Mm-hmm. I know. I know.
But yeah, so yeah, let's get back on topic
Yeah,
here.
I know. We digressed. We
Yeah,
digressed.
so we've basically come to a point in our society where we are trying to lower the standard of evidence and lower the standard of proof. And what it really comes down to is it's creating this polarization about the justice system that shouldn't exist. The whole point of the justice system and the fact that judges were supposed to be lifetime appointments and it was supposed to be, ratified by Congress and such was to create kind of a bipartisan atmosphere about the judiciary and to keep politics from being the primary function of the courtroom.
Well, what does the Lady of Justice look like? What does the Woman of Justice look like?
Well,
Is she blind?
she's got a blindfold, or she's blind, depending upon the statute. And that was supposed to be the whole point. It was supposed to be on the balance of the scales, on the weighing of evidence. Never about listen and believe,
Yeah.
And the whole idea has just kind of started to denigrate and dumb down our society. And
What
I'm
it's
really worried.
Have you noticed that they're trying to scream listen and believe at a judge?
Yeah, yeah, at a judge. This is a man who has weighed evidence, who has sat in courtrooms and listened to cases and made rulings based on them. And they're trying to claim that we need to just listen and believe that he's a bad man. Not that he's, it doesn't matter that there's no proof that he's done this bad thing. We need to just listen and believe.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing going on during the Trump campaign. He's a
Oh,
rapist.
grab her by the pussy. He said they will let you grab them by the pussy. He didn't say he did that. It was a joking metaphor that was true. See, that's okay. My favorite thing in the world is speaking socially awkward truths.
Oh, yeah, they're a lot of fun. And to be fair, there are plenty of women that chase after celebrities and will pretty much do whatever the celebrity wants them to do just so that they can be around that fame. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. How many women have you ever seen at a concert try to flash their breasts at the performers? Women used to throw their underwear on stage at Elvis. Yes. I mean, this is not make-believe. This has really happened. So we know that women, especially young women, who idolize entertainers are in awe of them. It's just like the little kid that wants his favorite baseball player to sign his baseball. It's idolizing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's and on top of that, okay, so you have a bunch of retards saying you have to listen and believe to a person who is fundamentally trained for every piece of his logic to not do listen and believe. They're attacking him, an evidentiary-based person, because this is what he does for a living. Obviously, it's going to be a part of his mentality that's daily. You're going to Supreme Court. Okay, come on. This is something you have inundated yourself with. It's going to be a part of your mentality, right? It's going to be. So you have this guy that's incredibly linear, and he has come out and done everything the way he is supposed to do it. Yet there is a herd of irrational, screaming, barking people that are pretending like they have control of the paradigm, but they don't. They aren't paying attention. How much... Oh, crap. Okay, I'm going to sit here and talk for a few minutes because apparently Veteran Mountain Man is having a few technical difficulties. Let's see if I can keep this going for him. With the creation of the listen and believe movement in modern terms, we are looking at a group of people that have no common sense, that expect everybody else to think the way they do because they live inside bubbles of exclusivity and money and privilege. It's basically the same group of people that are going to tell you, oh, okay, I think we may have lost the stream. Nope, okay, we're still on for now. With listen and believe, it's taking the opposite. Oh, he doesn't even have access to his keyboard. Okay, so I'm the only person in the Hangout right now. It says it's waiting for people to join this video call. So I'm not sure what happened. Veteran Mountain Man's computer locked up. Can you guys hear me at all? Can you guys hear me talking? Because we're having technical difficulties right now. So Listen and Believe has created not only a paradigm where people that think about law and have, okay, good, you guys can still hear us. Okay, so Listen and Believe is not only destructive for men because it makes them victims, it's destructive for women because it makes women less believable when they actually have, it's like the boy who cried wolf. Thank you guys. Is it male white privilege? It might be white male privilege that has caused the problem here, Alfred. It may be white male privilege froze Veteran Mountain Man's system here. So I was reading an article from, I think it was Vox last week, and I wanted to do, it's stupidity. It absolutely is, Pete. It's absolute stupidity. Listen and Believe is crazy. It's not just women that are pushing it, though. I was reading an article written by a guy, and I want to say it was Vox that I read it on, about Mel Gibson. So we know Mel Gibson made the angry anti-Semitic comments, and then he got in a fight with his wife where he was shaking where she was shaking the baby, and he smacked her a little bit to get her to stop shaking the baby. And they don't even talk about whether he was reaching for the baby and he smacked her in the process or what was going on, but she was shaking the baby and he was trying to stop her. And she tried to file assault charges against him, and those were all dropped. Yet, because those charges were filed, even though he was found not guilty of assaulting her at all, that stigma from, I don't know, 10 years or 6 years, 8 years ago, where she accused him and it wasn't true, even though it was not true, Mel Gibson is still accused of being a woman beater. He never assaulted anybody. He was protecting his baby. But this Vox article goes into, how he was accused of that, and he had the anti-Semitic drunk driving charges. But now 10 years later, because Jodie Foster's given him the ability to come back, how dare he do this? He shouldn't be allowed to ever act again. He should die in the streets because he was falsely accused of hitting his wife. That's the kind of thing. And it made me really mad, because if you're falsely accused and you wait 5 or 6 years to come back into a scene and you do all the right things, you make all the right statements, you work in the right places, you direct the right movies, and you show that you are remorseful for anything you've done that's wrong, like, the drinking. He did 10 years of sobriety and he said, look, I've gotten myself under control. I don't drink anymore and I'm not a cock. Look, if I don't drink, I'm a good person. And he's kept that mode going for the 10 years he's been fucking sober. But that's not good enough. No, because he supposedly, exactly, Alfred, you kick the baby. You don't shake the baby. It's a far more effective method to get him to stop.
Sorry, I had to kick over to my phone to come back in. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's the push of the political opinion, and no matter what the evidence, it's all the same. You have to believe that this is 100% the only way, no matter what the evidence says, no matter what the situation was. This is the narrative that we want, and so it has to be true.
Oh, absolutely. It's the narrative, the reality of the narrative doesn't even matter so much as just having the narrative. They just have to be able to say the words. It doesn't matter. It's found not guilty. Found not guilty. He was found not guilty. Just like probably Kavanaugh is going to be found not guilty of these allegations, right?
But actually, The Justice Cabinet has already mentioned that there is no corroborating evidence in the FBI investigation to substantiate any of these
Well,
claims.
did you notice the FBI investigation was done in 4 days?
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's no